New teacher transforms bullies in just 10 minutes. You won't believe what happened next. Emily Carter stood at the threshold of her new classroom, heart racing, palms clammy against the polished wood of the desk. She inhaled deeply, pushing nerves aside. A fresh start, she reminded herself, wiping away memories of past struggles and insecurities. With her youthful passion, she envisioned inspiring a generation to think critically and empathize deeply, defying the bullying that had marred her own school days. But apprehension gnawed at her. Could she really make a difference here? The moment she stepped inside, a hush fell upon the students. They were locked in an intricate dance of hierarchy, laughter echoing through the air, a twisted blend of camaraderie and cruelty. At the front, Jake Parker leaned back, casually tossing a basketball in one hand. Charm radiated from him, yet beneath that veneer pulsed a deep dissatisfaction. In the back, Sarah sank into her chair, the weight of relentless teasing pressing down on her. Emily's heart ached at the sight. She had faced her own demons and understood how isolating those moments could be. Determined to alter the course of her students' lives, she introduced her storytelling exercise, one that promised to bridge their emotional divides. Using her background in history, she drew parallels to moments of vulnerability throughout time, urging the students to share their own tales. As the minutes ticked by, the atmosphere shifted, eyes widening as barriers crumped. Emily felt her pulse quicken, excitement mingling with dread. Could she really create change, or was she setting herself up for failure? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their stories intertwined in a way that sparked a realization. The divisions they had forged were just masks hiding their pain and fear. Yet, as newfound connections began to form among the students, the principal's call loomed ominously, demanding conformity, potential repercussions for her unorthodox approach. In that fraught moment, the classroom buzzed with energy. Students wrestled with their identities and weighed the prospect of true unity. Could they embrace their vulnerabilities and stand alongside Emily despite the risk? Would they rise above the chains of bullying that had long governed their dynamic? The clock ticked loudly, the tension palpable. Emily felt the walls closing in, a storm brewing as she faced the formidable task before her. The air crackled with possibilities, but could courage prevail against the tides of fear? The answer hung in the balance, and in that charged atmosphere, everything was set for an explosive confrontation, one that threatened to change everything they thought they knew, forever. The tension in the room swirled around Emily like a palpable force. She observed Jake lean forward, eyes darting between the other students, as if gauging their reactions to his vulnerability. There was something raw and authentic in the way he opened himself up, slowly peeling away the layers he'd created over the years. But Emily knew all too well that this was only the beginning. Her heart pounded with a mix of exhilaration and dread. She had ignited a spark, but could she help them fan it into a flame? She sensed the students' anticipation. A psychological tightrope had been set before them, and they all teetered between fear and the thrill of genuine connection. But the reckoning was far from over. How could she keep pushing them towards honesty amid the ever-looming threat of potential backlash from the administration? As moments stretched into minutes, Sarah followed Jake's lead, her voice threading through the fear and laughter that had dominated the room. Every word laid bare her insecurities, the isolation, the relentless jeers about her appearance, the feeling of being invisible. Emotions surged, and Emily felt her resolve solidified. In that moment of truth, the seeds of empathy had begun to sprout, but doubt still curled around her mind like a shadow. Then, like an electric shock, Emily's phone buzzed on her desk. It was a fleeting reminder of the outside chaos, the principal's latest insistence on discipline and order, and the pressure to conform. She glanced down and back at her students, torn between two worlds. For these kids, this was their chance at change, and yet she risked everything if the administration viewed her methods as failures. "Let's take a moment," she said, grounding herself and her students. "What we're doing here is brave. Sharing our struggles is part of understanding each other, but I want to ensure we're not just talking. I want this to mean something." She challenged them.
What's one thing you can do to support someone else in this room? The questions hung heavy, forcing them to think critically about their new bonds. While hesitant at first, the room buzzed with discussion. Jake proposed a count of kindness in class, simple acts like including someone in a conversation or giving genuine praise. Sarah chimed in, suggesting they create a poster with their positive pledges to hold each other accountable. Emily watched in awe as vulnerability turned into resolve, budding ideas sparking forth with power. The narrative was shifting, but awareness of the principal's disapproval tugged at her conscience. This was all new territory for Emily. She felt the creeping fear of failure, that these connections could splinter under scrutiny from the iron grip of authority. Yet the weight of those responsibilities now seemed lighter. The principal's voice faded against the backdrop of this dynamic and transformative atmosphere. As they wrapped up the activity, Emily sensed a consciousness budding among the students, an understanding they were becoming a collective force, no longer just individuals trapped in painful cycles. But just as hope began to take root, an unsettling thought visited her, a looming confrontation with the authority that had threatened to stifle this burgeoning empathy. What if the principal intervened? Would she lose both her students and the chance to enact real change? She was running out of time, and the need for a decisive action gripped her. The moment had arrived. Emily recognized that she stood at a crossroads. The pathway to change lay before her, but would she continue on this uncharted route, knowing what was at stake? Could she defy the very expectations that bound her to a past she refused to repeat? As she contemplated her next steps, the bell rang, shocking her back to reality. The day was ending, but the challenge ahead was just beginning. Would she have the courage to face the principal and defend her newfound approach, or would she succumb to the fears that had haunted her before? The choice loomed large, and the clock was ticking. As the bell echoed against the walls, Emily felt her heart race with urgency. The students filed out, laughter and chatter swirling around her as they discussed their little count of kindness initiative. Their excitement was palpable, yet a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. She could sense it now. Each positive word they shared veiled the storm brewing just outside the classroom door. Emily took a deep breath and glanced around the room, her haven temporarily stripped of the weight of expectation. But her mind was focused on a singular goal, confronting the principal. The thought sent a pulse of adrenaline through her. She had to protect this fragile breakthrough before it was extinguished. She gathered her belongings slowly, hesitating momentarily as dread washed over her. What if the principal dismissed her methods?
What if he deemed her tactics unprofessional, frivolous even? Would she forever be labeled a maverick without a cause? These fears clawed at her resolve. Was she willing to stake everything on this one idea? Before she could overthink it, she marched toward the principal's office, determination replacing hesitation step by step. The layouts of the school felt familiar yet foreign. Walls that had once seemed so rigid now loomed as barriers to a changing tide. She paused outside the principal's door, her pulse thundering in her ears. With a sharp knock, she pushed the door open. The principal, Mr. Prescott, looked up from his paperwork. His expression was a mix of intrigue and annoyance, his brow furrowed under the weight of authority. "Emily," he said flatly, "is there something urgent?" "Yes, actually. I wanted to discuss today's session." Her tone was defiant, a hint of resolve lacing her words. She took a step closer, ready to articulate her vision against the formal constraints he typically upheld. "I believe what I've initiated is essential for these kids. They're opening up, connecting, and supporting one another in ways I haven't seen before." Mr. Prescott scoffed slightly, leaning back in his chair with steepled fingers. "And you think this emotionally driven exercise will create lasting change? They need discipline. They need structure. This is a classroom, not a therapy session." His words felt like ice shards, cutting through her enthusiasm. Anger flared momentarily, but Emily stifled it. A battle of values surged within her. She knew she had to carefully craft her response. "Discipline alone won't solve their behavioral issues, sir. These students need to understand their emotions, not just conform to rules." She paused to let her point sink in. "They are learning to hold each other accountable, and that could change the fabric of the school's culture. Isn't that worth considering?" His eyes narrowed, weighing her words. "And if I said you were overstepping your bounds?" "Then I would argue that it's time for those bounds to be redefined." Her voice was steady now, confidence stemming from the strength she felt in her students' interactions and their potential growth. A charged silence enveloped them. Emily could see the flicker of contemplation behind his stern facade. It was a moment ripe with possibilities. Yet she sensed a counterattack brewing as Mr. Prescott leaned forward, fingers still steepled, almost like a king preparing to decide the fate of a territory. "By facilitating these emotional exchanges, you open yourself to accountability if it backfires. I'll warn you, Emily, you're on thin ice." The ultimatum hung heavily in the air,
But Emily remained unwavering. Her conviction held firm. She was embodying the change she wanted her students to grasp. Yet doubt slithered back into her thoughts. Did she truly possess the fortitude to continue standing her ground?
What were the ethical implications of her changing approach? The moment felt like two worlds colliding, the old guard against the whirlwind of rebirth. As she faced him, a question loomed larger than the conversation itself. How far was she willing to push her vision of empathy against the tide of convention? With her heart racing, Emily took a deep breath, prepared to defend her passion and pivot this moment into something transformative. This was her moment. But would her defiance sow the seeds for lasting change, or sow seeds of her own destruction? The clock was ticking, and in that charged atmosphere, the stakes had never been higher. The silence stretched thin, punctuated only by the ticking clock on the wall. Emily's heart raced, not just from the confrontation, but from the stakes looming over her. She could sense Mr. Prescott weighing her passion against the principles of traditional teaching. This wasn't just about her methods. It was about redefining how the very fabric of their school operated, the values it upheld. Thin ice indeed, she thought, feeling the weight of those words settle in her chest. A fear pulsated within her, but was quickly countered by a flicker of determination. If she allowed herself to be silenced now, she could miss out on a pivotal moment, not just for her, but for her students who were transforming right before her eyes. "Mr. Prescott," she started, her tone softer but no less resolute. "I understand the concerns about professionalism and structure, but look at what is happening in my classroom. Today, the students shared their vulnerabilities openly. They displayed empathy, a valuable lesson far beyond what any regimented curriculum could offer." He remained distinctly unmoved, his posture tense in rebuttal. "You're romanticizing a fleeting moment. Emotions can't serve as a reliable foundation for education." "Perhaps not alone, but they are undeniably part of the whole," Emily countered. "Avoiding emotional learning risks leaving our students ill-equipped to handle the world outside of these walls. Bullying, depression, anxiety, these are very real issues, and we have a chance to address them head-on." Her resolve ignited, fueled by the urgency of the conversation. "And suppose they become too attached to these emotional outlets," Prescott challenged. "What then? Is it your responsibility to coddle them?" "In a way, yes," Emily replied, daring to take a step closer, her voice unwavering. "But more so, I wish to empower them. When they understand themselves and each other, they learn to respond with compassion instead of hostility. But I can't do that without your support. I'm not asking for permission to lower academic standards. I'm advocating to elevate their emotional intelligence." Mr. Prescott's expression remained stoic, although the tension in his brow hinted at an inner turmoil.
Emily felt her heart thud again, this time with the realization that she was up against more than just a disagreeable principle. This was a battle of educational ideologies, compliance versus growth. What if this backfires? Prescott leaned back, appearing more contemplative than combative. What if, in your quest for emotional learning, you generate chaos? That's a risk I'm willing to take, but it's not chaos I seek. It's authenticity. It was a bold stance, one that surged from a place deep within her, where empathy and pragmatism converged. I can't ignore their humanity and pretend they are just vessels for information. They need to learn to navigate the human experience, not just academically, but personally. With each word, Emily felt her confidence swell. The fear dissipated slightly, revealing clarity. But as she spoke, an unsettling thought nagged at her. Was she prepared for the pushback? What if this initiative did lead to unforeseen consequences? The weight of responsibility felt immense. "Let's be clear," Prescott finally stated, his voice steady. "Any fallout, be it behavioral or professional, will fall on you, Emily. I won't shield you if this fails." She met his gaze head-on, her own resolve solidifying. "I understand the risks, and I accept them, but I ask for a chance to prove the worth of this approach." The charged silence hung heavy once more, the room thick with unspoken words and weighty decisions. Emily stood poised on the brink of something vast and undefined. Mr. Prescott's eyes held hers, and in that moment, both seemed aware that this wasn't merely an exchange of perspectives. It was an unveiling of a crucial turning point. "Very well," he finally said, the words slipping from his lips with cautious reluctance. "But understand, you'll have to earn the faculty's trust on this. If it fails, I may have no choice but to intervene." The clock continued its relentless ticking, but Emily felt as though time had shifted. An uncharted path lay ahead of her, fraught with peril, yet liberating in its potential. Determination flared anew as she turned to leave, each step a mix of hope and trepidation. Would her dedication lead to constructive change, or would she uncover hidden truths that would force her to reevaluate who she was as an educator? The baton had been passed, and with it came revelation. Could she mold her own narrative amidst the paradigm she wished to shift? The next classroom session loomed before her like a glorious unknown. Would it ignite further change, or reveal her greatest fears? Each question echoed in her mind, teasing her with the thrill of possibility and the gravity of consequence. As Emily's footsteps echoed down the dimly lit corridor, reality settled heavily around her. She clutched her lesson plan tightly, her thoughts a tumultuous whirlpool. She felt exhilaration, apprehension, and a hint of isolation creep in, the weight of her resolve proving both a source of strength and vulnerability.
The stakes felt higher than ever. Her immediate goal was not merely to teach, but to dismantle complacency, embracing the very core of emotional learning. In the comfort of her classroom, she managed to muster a calm exterior. The students filed in, their laughter and chatter forming the backdrop to her internal struggle. She had always seen the classroom as a safe haven, but now it felt like a battleground where she would need to earn both her students' trust and prove her pedagogical approach valuable. Taking a deep breath, she initiated an unusual opening for the day. She would start with a vulnerability circle. This was risky, as traditional protocol on show and tell often avoided feelings in favor of facts. However, she believed deeply in the interconnectedness of empathy and education. "Good morning, everyone," she declared, taking center stage. "Today, we're going to do something a little different. I'd like each of you to share one thing that's been on your mind lately, something that makes you feel vulnerable." A wall of silence met her request, the room seemingly frozen at the edge of uncertainty. She spotted a few curious, skeptical expressions and felt the pressure building. "It's okay if it feels a bit awkward. I'm here with you. Sharing means we can grow stronger together," she encouraged, her voice warm yet assertive. To her surprise, Timmy, usually a quiet student, raised his hand. "I'm scared of being bullied in high school. Everyone says it's worse there." The weight of those words hung in the air. Emily's heart sank for the boy, but she realized this was the catalyst others needed. Slowly, one by one, students began to open up about their fears, anxiety about tests, worries about friendships, and even dealing with family issues. Emily guided the discussion, validating their feelings and encouraging them to find connections amongst their fears. "It's important to know you're not alone in this," she said, a growing warmth spreading through her chest as she witnessed their shift from skepticism to solidarity. "You're all brave for sharing today." But within her, doubt nagged incessantly. Were her methods truly transformative, or would they risk alienating her from her colleagues? Each student who shared an emotional truth felt like a triumph, yet Emily simultaneously feared that the faculty would see only chaos and disregard for curricular integrity. Just as the bell rang, marking the end of the session, Emily experienced an unexpected revelation. Vulnerability had become her greatest strength. If she could embody her beliefs rather than fear the repercussions, perhaps she could inspire those around her. But as she gathered her belongings, Timmy approached. "Miss Hart, could we do this again? I think it helped. I feel lighter, you know?" His words hung uncharacteristically heavy, a tremor of hope laced with the unsettling realization of her newfound responsibility. "Of course, Timmy," she managed, surprised by the swell of emotion crashing over her. Did that mean she was breaking through? However, as she packed her things, uncertainty clouded her spirit. Would Mr. Prescott see this as a mere classroom exercise or a legitimate shift toward something bigger? Was she prepared for whatever backlash might come if this choice became controversial? The echo of Prescott's caution resonated in her mind. Any fallout would rest on her shoulders. Emily felt a flicker of rebellion spark within. She had accepted the challenge. Now the real test loomed ahead. How to maintain both her passion and her position in the face of a potentially skeptical administration.
As she made her way to the staff room for the first time since the meeting, introspection gripped her. Would she find acceptance among her colleagues, or was she destined to stand alone in the pursuit of this radically different educational path? The reality of implementation loomed larger than before, promising significant change or stark rejection. Just as she pushed the door open to the buzzing staff room, silence fell. A few heads turned, eyes measuring her. The weight of their collective gaze felt tangible, yet she stood resolute. The moment of truth had arrived. Emily's heart raced as she stepped into the staff room, the air thick with unspoken judgments. Tables filled with colleagues turned their attention toward her, murmuring amongst themselves. The laughter she had enjoyed with her students felt like a distant echo, replaced by the palpable tension that painted the walls with uncertainty. She approached the coffee station, attempting to shield herself from the scrutiny, yet inwardly a storm brewed. It was one thing to stand before her students with authenticity, but here, among the seasoned educators, her bravado wavered. Was she recognized for her intentions or dismissed as an idealist? Her fingers trembled around her coffee cup, and she struggled to grasp her resolve. "Emily, can I have a word?" The voice broke from the cluster of her colleagues. It was Mr. Prescott, his gaze sharp like an arrow aimed straight at her composure. The others turned their heads back to their conversations, but Emily could feel the weight of his scrutiny keenly. "Of course," she replied, steeling herself. He gestured toward the far end of the staff room, away from prying ears. As they moved, dread coursed through her veins. What would he want to say? "Your approach today, it raised some eyebrows," he said once they were slightly isolated. "I appreciate the intention behind the vulnerability circle, but you must understand the importance of maintaining academic structure. Sharing feelings is unorthodox." She swallowed, surprised by a surge of defiance. "With all due respect, Mr. Prescott, isn't fostering a safe space for students just as vital as the curriculum? You're not here to play therapist," he interrupted sharply. "You're a teacher, just remember that."
His sternness shattered whatever momentum she had gained from Timmy's support moments ago. As he walked away, Emily grappled with the implications of his words. She had feared this confrontation, yet it was now clear that her endeavors were threading the line between acceptance and rejection within the faculty. Her confidence had wavered, but a deeper, more resilient part of her caught fire. Teachers were often portrayed as innovators. Perhaps it was time she internalized that role. In the coming days, she planned to amplify the ideas of emotional learning. Fueled by her students' heartfelt disclosures, she pieced together a workshop proposal focusing on empathy training for faculty. It felt bold, perhaps recklessly ambitious, but necessary. Emily meticulously structured the draft, aligning emotional education with academic benchmarks. The thought of sharing it with her colleagues both excited and terrified her. Her heart raced at the potential backlash and ridicule, but she pushed forward. The students were worth it. "Can you believe she's trying to turn us into counselors?" whispered Karen, a colleague, as Emily passed her in the corridor. Their condescending laughter pricked Emily's skin, threatening her newfound determination. Yet she refused to shrink beneath their judgment. Instead, she invited a select few colleagues into the fold, the ones who had voiced curiosity or support in the past. They gathered after school, and as she pitched her workshop idea, their reactions varied. Jim, a staunch traditionalist, crossed his arms defiantly, his skepticism clear. But when Emily shared Timmy's transformative experience, she noticed a slight shift in his expression, a crack in his steadfast facade. "What if we could enhance classroom environments?" she ventured, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "Couldn't creating emotional connections improve engagement?" As the discussions unfolded, Emily witnessed a breakthrough. Each teacher brought forth their apprehensions, mirroring her own insecurities. The conversation shifted from criticism to collaboration, the potential for unity igniting sparks of innovation. That evening, as she drove home, the conflict within her sparked a new awareness. The battle wasn't solely against her colleagues' perceptions, but within herself. As she confronted her fears of failure and rejection, she found unexpected courage surfacing. What if she was precisely what the school needed? Before bed, she jotted down her thoughts, but each line she penned only deepened her desire to take a stand for what she believed in. She resolved to present her workshop proposal formally, putting herself on the line once more. The next morning at the staff meeting, she felt the flutter of apprehensive excitement in her chest. As she prepared to address the faculty again, she couldn't shake off the feeling that now was the moment to lay everything on the table. But the faces staring back at her made her pause.
Who would stand as her ally, and who would become her adversary when the proposal was unveiled? The air shifted, charged with unspoken tension. Would she spark resistance or inspire transformation? As she took a deep breath, the stark reality of her journey rushed in. It was not just about implementing a new teaching strategy, but facing her own fears head-on. Would she find the strength to not only advocate for her beliefs, but also embrace the risks involved? The moment had arrived, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Emily's breath lodged in her throat as she stood in front of the faculty, her palms damp against the podium's surface. The murmurs dissipated as she sensed the room's tension, some faces curious, others steeped in skepticism. She had fought her doubts all morning, yet their silent judgment weighed heavily. It threatened to undo the resolve she had painstakingly built. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice shaking. "I'd like to share a proposal that I believe can revolutionize our teaching methods and enhance student engagement." She steadied herself, focusing on the collective faces in front of her, searching for any glimmer of support. As she elaborated on her idea for a workshop on emotional learning, her initial enthusiasm flickered like a candle in a gust of wind. "We've seen how students respond when they feel safe and connected. Just last week, one of my students, Timmy, found the courage to share a deeply personal story during our vulnerability circle. The change wasn't just in him, his classmates rallied around him, and it transformed the dynamic in my classroom." A ripple of discomfort passed through the audience. Mr. Prescott's brow furrowed as if in pain, while Jim's arms remained resolutely crossed, his body language a fortress against her words. Emily's heart raced as she anticipated their rebuttals. "But what happens when they leave our classrooms? Isn't it time we teach emotional intelligence alongside academic success?" She noticed a few heads nodding, small victories, yet Karen's laughter pierced through the silence. "So we're just going to sit around and hold hands? How's that going to prepare them for the real world?" The laughter that followed felt like daggers. It cut through her defense, leaving her momentarily stunned. Yet the sight of Timmy's hopeful smile flashed in her mind, igniting something within her. "Actually, Karen," she retorted, her voice gaining strength, "developing empathy and resilience prepares them for emotional challenges they'll inevitably face, both in and out of school. It's about equipping them with the tools they need to navigate life." The room fell silent, the boldness of her words hanging heavy in the air. She glanced around, catching the eyes of colleagues who had shared in the initial discussions. Their tentative support whispered hope. Emily's pulse quickened as she pushed against the pressure, daring to confront her colleagues.
What if we could create an environment where students don't just learn, they thrive, where they can express their emotions without judgment? Isn't that something we should strive for? A moment of quiet stretched on as she searched for allies in the sea of skepticism, but the fear of rejection loomed like a dark cloud, defeating her momentarily. What had once felt like a rallying call now danced precariously on the edge of vulnerability and potential ridicule. Then Jim stepped forward. "Emily, I do understand where you're coming from, but my priority is ensuring they're prepared academically. What evidence do you have that this approach works?" His critique drove like a nail. Emily's thoughts raced. Where was her evidence? Her mind flitted back to Timmy, back to that moment of genuine connection. "If I may, I don't have extensive data yet, but I do have a classroom full of kids who are learning to be honest, to be supportive, to listen. Isn't that important?" The room was at an impasse. Emily could feel the cynical gazes of some colleagues fixed on her, while a flicker of intrigue began to seep into others. In this moment of uncertainty, she grasped at a revelation. Her fight wasn't against her peers, but against a mindset that resisted change. As she wrapped up her presentation, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. "I believe this workshop can shift our school culture. I understand it may seem unconventional, but innovation often requires courage to step outside traditional boundaries." With that, she took a deep breath, allowing her eyes to scan the room one last time, hoping for a flicker of agreement. Instead, she was met with stoic faces. The conclusion sparked a sense of urgency within her. She hadn't changed minds today, but she had planted seeds. "Think about it," she added as the meeting drew to a close, "and I'm open to further discussions. Together, we can explore ways to integrate this into our curriculum." As she left the staff room, an internal voice wrestled with her doubts and fears. Could she face another round of resistance? Would anyone rally behind her vision? Driving home that day, Emily questioned whether her efforts were misplaced. Yet beneath it all, a stubborn determination pulsed within. She could not give up. Her students needed her advocacy. That night, as she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Timmy flashed across the screen. "Thank you for believing in us, Miss Adams. You make a difference." Emily felt a swell of faith in her mission. The world might be resistant, but she was determined to change the narrative in her own small way. What awaited her the next day? Would she emerge stronger, or would this be a battle lost? The question gnawed at her as she prepared for bed. As dawn broke, she prepared to face her colleagues again, steeling herself for the potential fallout.
The fight for her workshop wasn't over. She was just beginning to realize that her journey was not solely about the workshop itself, but about the conviction to stand firm in her beliefs against all odds. The moment of truth approached, and she was ready to confront whatever awaited her ahead. Emily stepped into the faculty lounge, heart pounding as she confronted the lingering weight of yesterday's exchanges. Each breath pressed upon her, reminding her of the audience's mixed reactions. Today, she knew she had to pivot. She had to find a way to engage her colleagues meaningfully, to show them the necessity of emotional learning. She approached her colleague Lisa, who was known for her balanced views. "Hey, can we chat? I'd love your perspective on my idea for the workshop," she asked, attempting to mask her apprehension with a casual demeanor. Lisa raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Sure, what do you have in mind?" As they settled at a small table, Emily outlined her proposal, incorporating more data and examples that she had researched overnight. "I understand that emotional learning appears soft, but studies indicate it boosts retention and academic performance. If we can create a safe space, students will not only thrive emotionally, but also academically." Lisa nodded, though her expression remained contemplative. "But have you thought about how to bridge that with the curriculum? How do we measure success?" Emily felt the sting of doubt again, as Lisa's questions peeled back her resolve. "I know metrics are important, but isn't it equally crucial to foster empathy? Students like Timmy are proof of that. It's about changing lives, you know?" In that moment, a timid voice interrupted. The school counselor, Rob, had overheard their conversation. "Emily, I think what you're proposing is vital, but we must back it up with a plan. If we can present a strategy that outlines how emotional learning correlates to academic improvement, it could sway others." With renewed energy, Emily felt a flicker of hope. "Exactly. We can create surveys or testimonials from students and parents showing the impact of a supportive environment." Rob's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, and for a fleeting second, Emily felt buoyed by a shared vision. However, as she anticipated their next encounter with the faculty, the nagging fear returned. Would they still view her as naive? Could she wrangle more than just tentative agreements? Determined, she spent the following hours drafting a more structured proposal. Each bullet point felt like a rallying cry for an innovative future, one where emotional learning sat alongside traditional subjects. She included predictive statistics and case studies, specifics that might combat skepticism. This was not merely about her classroom. This was about influencing the entire school culture. That afternoon, she called for a meeting with the faculty to present her refined ideas.
She entered the room with a practiced composure, feeling her heart race as familiar, skeptical faces awaited her words. "Thank you for allowing me this time again," she started, feeling the weight of anticipation. "I've taken your feedback to heart and focused on how we can measure the effectiveness of emotional learning through actionable strategies." As she presented, detailing the relationship between emotional intelligence and academic success, Emily watched her colleagues' reactions shift. Instead of skepticism, she noticed intrigue weaving through the air. Jim sat up straighter, his arms now uncrossed as he began taking notes. Emily seized the momentum. "If we can implement this, we can also establish baseline metrics and conduct follow-ups on student behavior and performance. Let's not just prepare them for academics, but also for life's emotional realities." Karen, usually the fiercest critic, narrowed her eyes as if considering an unfamiliar perspective. "All right, Emily, if you can show that this actually enhances learning, I could support a pilot program." Buoyed again by a mix of disbelief and exhilaration, Emily ended her presentation by inviting everyone to imagine a school where every child felt valued and capable. As discussions began to unfold, she stood back, heart racing, a new realization dawning. She was not merely pitching a workshop, she was helping to redefine success in education. The life-changing power of vulnerability and connection was gaining traction. With the murmur of tentative agreements filling the room, Emily realized how far she had come since her initial foray. She was no longer the lone voice echoing in a crowd, she was evolving into a catalyst for change. As the meeting concluded, a soft but firm knock at the door diverted her thoughts. Mr. Prescott, the steadfast critic, had arrived with a furrowed brow and a look of deliberation. "Emily, I need to talk to you about a few ideas." The breath caught in Emily's throat once more. The conversation that followed could either cement her progress or unravel it. What could he possibly want to discuss? The uncertainty hovered in the air like a storm cloud, and she was left to confront whatever revelation lay ahead. Emily's heart raced as Mr. Prescott closed the door behind him, sealing them in a small bubble of uncertainty. She quickly composed herself, restructuring her racing thoughts into a more coherent form. "Mr. Prescott,
"What's on your mind?" she asked, striving for an air of confidence despite the gnawing doubt. He leaned back against the desk, his arms crossed tightly. "I've been thinking about your proposal, and while I can appreciate the effort, I'm concerned about how easily emotional learning can be dismissed as fluff. There's a lot at stake here." Emily felt her pulse quicken at his directness. "I understand your concerns, really, but that's precisely why we must demonstrate its practical impact, not just in theory, but in measurable ways."
She took a step closer, her determination surging to the surface. Every student has the right to feel empowered and understood. Isn't that the most important goal of education? Mr. Prescott's skepticism wavered momentarily, a flicker of something akin to intrigue passing through his steely demeanor. "You say that, but how do we convince the board? They look for our standardized test results. How do we address that?" Taking a deep breath, Emily thought of the students, Timmy with his shy smile, and others who hid behind walls built by years of neglect. What if we link the emotional learning outcomes to improved test scores? We could design an integrated program where emotional intelligence directly enhances student engagement with the material. The correlation could be the bridge we need. "How will you measure engagement?" he asked, arms still folded, but his posture softened slightly, a small victory. Emily pushed forward. "Think about it. Surveys can gauge students' feelings about school, teacher-student interactions, and their self-esteem. We would gather data on both academic performance and emotional well-being before and after our interventions. By comparing results, we could illustrate the positive correlation." For a moment, the skepticism in Mr. Prescott's eyes seemed to dissipate beneath a layer of contemplation. The silence felt heavy, brimming with potential, and Emily seized the moment to delve deeper. "Our students need more than just facts to memorize. They need to feel valued, to know they're integral to the community. That gives them the confidence to learn." His brow furrowed as he absorbed her words, internal conflict washing over his features. Emily sensed she had struck a chord. But what about teachers who resist this change? "No one wants to feel vulnerable in front of their students," he finally said, the doubt returning. "Vulnerability does not equate to weakness. It's a path to authentic connection," Emily asserted. "We need to model that behavior as educators. If we support our own emotional growth, we can better guide our students through theirs." Mr. Prescott's demeanor shifted slightly, as if he were no longer merely her opposition, but instead a colleague contemplating a different perspective. "All right, I see your point, but you need a solid pilot program that can convince others. If you're going to go through with this, you must be ready to back it up with data." Emily nodded, a rush of motivation flooding through her veins. She felt empowered by the challenge rather than daunted. "I can do that. I'll reach out to other educators with similar interests and construct a proposal that addresses those specific metrics. Together, we can assemble the evidence." As Mr. Prescott began to speak again, Emily felt a well of determination swell within her. "I appreciate you meeting with me today. It's more than I expected." He offered a cautious nod, still guarded, but she could sense the shift. Her willingness to confront was altering their dynamic. They were beginning to share a vision, however tentative. As they wrapped up their conversation, Emily felt a thrilling mixture of empowerment and trepidation. This was a pivotal moment in her journey, a chance to advocate fiercely for her beliefs while navigating the complex landscape of professional dynamics. Before she left, Mr. Prescott paused, looking her straight in the eyes. "You're on the right track, Emily. Just be ready for the pushback. People fear what they don't understand." She nodded, understanding all too well the battle that lay ahead. The uncertainty felt heavier now, a tangible weight on her shoulders. Would her efforts bring the change she so desperately wanted, or would they be met with derision? As Emily stepped out of the office, the moment crystallized in her mind. A battle of ideologies had begun, and she knew she had to fight for the hearts of her colleagues and students alike. Only time would reveal the outcome, and she was determined to be at the forefront of that battle, armed with passion and data. As she made her way back to her classroom, a thought struck her. What if she could gather a group of students who had thrived emotionally to serve as advocates for her cause? The idea sparked a new urgency and a plan unfurling in her mind. She began plotting, her mind racing forward to the next steps. Could collaborating with students carry the weight of her proposal and disarm the remaining skeptics? The answer lingered tantalizingly close, just out of reach. Emily Carter stood at the front of her classroom, an energy pulsating in the air that she could only describe as electric.
It had been several weeks since her initial confrontation with Principal Prescott and the subsequent workshops she had tirelessly orchestrated. The results were undeniable. Her students, once anxious and skeptical, were now flourishing in an environment fostering emotional intelligence alongside academic rigor. Each day brought fresh perspectives and bold discussions on empathy that reverberated beyond the classroom walls. Today marked a significant milestone, the culmination of her pilot program on emotional learning, which not only aimed to boost student connections, but drive measurable academic success. She had gathered evidence, collated testimonials, and designed surveys that demonstrated a direct correlation between emotional engagement and enhanced academic performance. The data pointed in a positive direction, not merely in theory, but manifested in tangible results. "Let's begin with a reflection," Emily announced, her voice steady, revealing none of the adrenaline surging through her. "Think about how we've grown together this semester. What have you learned? Not just about history or math, but about yourselves." Hands shot up eagerly, each student ready to articulate their journeys.
Jake spoke first, recounting a story of overcoming his fears of inadequacy. "I used to think letting people in would make me weak, but now I realize it makes me strong. Sharing my struggles helped me find real friendships." Emily felt a swell of pride. This transformation had been her dream and purpose. "That's powerful, Jake. Remember, vulnerability is the gateway to authentic connection." Sarah chimed in next, her voice gaining strength. "I used to hide because I thought nobody could relate. Now I feel like I belong." As their narratives unfolded, Emily witnessed the raw authenticity her lesson plan had sparked. However, as the excitement soared, the shadow of her confrontation with Principal Prescott lingered in her mind. She hadn't yet fully earned his trust, nor had she secured approval from the broader faculty. Today was not just an opportunity for her students, it was a crucial moment for her theory to gain official validation. As the class concluded, Emily shifted gears, transitioning to their presentation for the faculty meeting later that afternoon. With each carefully chosen word, she reflected on the growth she saw, the connections made, and the measurable outcomes. "Today we will show how emotional learning impacts academic success," she stated firmly to her students. "We'll present the data, the student testimonials, and how we can implement this across the school. It's our chance to redefine education together." Later that day, as Emily stood before a skeptical panel of colleagues, including Principal Prescott, her heart raced, but her resolve remained unshaken. "I want to share the impact our pilot program has had," she began, unfolding a meticulously curated presentation filled with data, anecdotes, and visual evidence. She elaborated on how students who once struggled with engagement were now thriving, how emotional learning had shifted students' mindsets and altered their perceptions of failure and support. "By fostering an environment promoting both emotional resilience and academic achievement, we have a responsibility to lead our students beyond the classroom," she concluded, her voice echoing with conviction. As she spoke, she locked eyes with Mr. Prescott, watching as his skepticism began to waver. Emotion danced across the faces of her colleagues. Something was shifting. Jim, who had previously appeared steadfastly critical, raised his hand. "You've clearly demonstrated the potential benefits, but how do we maintain these gains when faced with standardized testing pressures?" Emily was ready for this question. "By integrating emotional learning into existing subject areas, we infuse it into the standard curriculum. Data shows that schools implementing these strategies not only improve emotional well-being, but also increase academic performance in standardized assessments." Karen shifted in her seat, her brows furrowing in thought. "And if participation dips, how do we ensure all students engage?" "Yes."
"That's crucial," Sarah burst in, her confidence a testament to the progress they had all made together. "In this class, we chose to support each other. We made it a challenge to encourage everyone to contribute, and that's vital for emotional engagement." Emily couldn't suppress her smile. The students were resonating their lived experience with the faculty, building bridges she once feared might be insurmountable. As the meeting wrapped up, murmurs of agreement rippled through the staff, and Emily could feel a shift in the atmosphere of the room. Principal Prescott motioned for silence, and the anticipation hung in the air. "Emily," he began, "I have to admit, today has challenged my beliefs about emotional learning. It appears that we are not just seeing the fragments of change, we're witnessing a fully formed progression in our students." "Thank you, Mr. Prescott," she replied, a swell of gratitude washing over her. "This program requires continual support from all of us, and I am committed to collaborating with our entire faculty to foster an environment where emotional and academic growth can occur simultaneously." The nods from her colleagues signaled more than mere acknowledgement. They were endorsements, a collective willingness to move forward together. In that moment, Emily felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced her fears head-on, unwavering in her belief that education should embrace the entirety of the student experience. Her journey had evolved from a tentative novice to a recognized pioneer in her field. Leaving the meeting, Emily realized it was time to shift her narrative entirely. No longer considered an outsider, she had forged a pathway to collaborative growth. The echoes of laughter and shared stories from her classroom became the canvas for an educational philosophy that could redefine success. She had not only conquered her past uncertainties, but emerged inspired, confident, and filled with purpose. This was the achievement she had envisioned, not simply for herself, but for every student fostering their own growth in a connected community. And as her students took their positions as champions of emotional learning, Emily felt the weight of fulfillment. They had become advocates for empathy in a system resistant to change. She would continue to support them, nurturing the growth they all deserved. This was only the beginning. Now, the challenge was to maintain momentum and continue pushing boundaries in education, advocating that emotional insight is indeed the key to unlocking human potential. To everyone watching and experiencing her journey, this was the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now to follow Emily's journey as she strives to make even more profound changes in education. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping others find this transformative story of overcoming obstacles. Comment your reactions and theories below. What changes do you believe should happen next?
And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because you understand the urgency of this narrative and the power of emotional education. Don't wait even one more second to support this movement.